Okay, so it looks like we are ready to get started. Thank you all very much for being here today. My name is Bree Reynolds and I'm the Senior Career Specialist at FlexJobs. And very interested in talking to you all today about preparing for your 2019 job search for flexible and remote jobs. This is one of those topics that is near and dear to my heart, and I like talking about it. So let's go ahead and get started. So the topics that I'm going to go over today include a few different things. First, just some housekeeping about what to expect for the hour. And then we'll get into the flexible and remote job market, what it actually looks like, what types of industries and companies and jobs you might find with different types of flexibility. We'll also get into your 2019 job search roadmap. So I know a lot of you here today are probably interested in getting a new job in the new year. That tends to be one of those big New Year's resolutions. And bravo to everyone who's here today for starting early, because the earlier you get started and set yourself up for this job search that you're going to do, even if you're starting to actually search right now, or whether you're really going to wait till January 1st or after, just the fact that you are here and preparing is a really good thing. A lot of people get to January 1st and they wake up and say, okay, I think it's time to find a new job. So doing this ahead of time will definitely set you up to be in a really good spot whenever you decide to actually start your job search. I'll also talk just very briefly about how FlexJobs can help your search, and then I want to get to your questions and answers. So I'm going to try to keep my presentation to about 35 or 40 minutes today and leave the rest of the time that we have for questions. So as I said, 40 minutes or so of a presentation, and then hopefully around 15 to 20 minutes for questions and answers. If you have a question, you can use the question and answer section on your Zoom. Don't ask the questions in the chat area. That's one thing to know. We look for the questions in the questions area. So that is where to put them. And then the webinar is recorded. So we're going to cover a lot of ground today. And if there's anything that you need to be refreshed on or you wanted to go over again, we will be sending the recording to everyone tomorrow. So you'll receive a link. You'll be able to review that recording and figure out everything that you needed to know all in one nice little package. All right, just a bit about job search, the job search service FlexJobs. So I'm the Senior Career Specialist at FlexJobs, and we specialize in remote and flexible job listings, which includes things like freelance jobs, telecommuting and remote, part-time, flexible hours, and even temporary jobs. We've helped over 3.5 million job seekers since our founding in 2007, and we have over 50,000 vetted companies on our site, which means they've all been pre-screened to make sure that they're legitimate and quality professional companies, and that they've offered flexible and remote jobs. So it's a really good research site, even if you're not a FlexJobs member, to use FlexJobs for your company research is a great thing. We're also a membership site, which means that job seekers subscribe for a small fee and receive access to pre-screened job listings. Like I was saying, we screen everything before it gets posted on our site. We also have skills testing, career coaching, and other job search support. So we really try to make it as easy as possible for a job seeker to be successful. The other thing about our site is, of course, every job and every company has to offer some type of flexibility. So that's really what sets us apart. If you're looking for a flexible job, we are a good place to find it. We don't take money from employers to post their jobs. So in order to do that, job seekers are our primary clients, not advertisers or employers. And we also have a lot of good public information and help. So if you are not a member of FlexJobs, you can always use FlexJobs for our great job seeker blog and our company research and other things like that. Okay, so let's talk also about, let's go in here, the flexible and remote job market. So what does this actually look like, and what can you expect as you're starting your search? First, I want to talk about what counts as a flexible job. And if you have attended one of our webinars before, you've probably heard me give this spiel, but thank you for bearing with me because I think it's really important to denote what is a flexible job. We look at scheduling, location, status, and hours to determine what might be a flexible job. That could be flexible or alternative schedules, telecommuting or remote jobs, and then freelance or employee jobs. Freelance jobs we think are inherently flexible because they really give you a lot of control over when, where, how you are working. And then employee jobs could be flexible as long as they offer some other type of flexibility, like in scheduling or location. And then your hours determine flexibility as well. So part-time jobs are inherently flexible, just like freelance, because they are having you work a smaller schedule, and full-time jobs can be flexible as long as they offer some other type of flexibility. I also wanted to point out that casual and formal arrangements can count. So when you're thinking of your own experiences and whether you've ever worked flexibly before, you might say, well, it wasn't really a formal thing. My boss just let me work from home, one day a week or every so often when I needed to. But that counts as well. When you're thinking of your experiences and whether you've ever worked this way before, even those casual arrangements can count. And all companies do it different ways. So every company has a little bit different way of managing flexibility, if they even manage it at all. Sometimes they don't. And then the bottom line is really that anything outside of a traditional 9-to-5 in-office role could be a flexible job, something that we would post on FlexJobs. In the next slides, I'm going to throw a lot of lists at you. So get ready for that. And as you're looking at the lists, our goal is really to get you thinking about your possibilities. So the first step in any job search process is always the possibility step, thinking about what is out there for you and what you might be able to do. We can narrow the focus later, and we will, but right now I definitely want you to be thinking in possibilities. What might you be interested in doing? So the first thing I want to talk about are fast-growing flexible jobs. The 10 career fields that are coming up right now have seen the most growth over the last year in terms of the number of job openings posted on FlexJobs. And this is actually data from 2016 versus 2017. So in that year, we haven't actually done 2017 to 2018 yet in a comparison because we're still in 2018. So these grew really heavily in that 2016 to 2017 period. And I expect that we will see a lot of these pop up in our next look at this data once it becomes available. But we wanted to point these out because it's important to know where jobs are being posted. And these are some of the most popular fields right now, really, in terms of growth. And then for a little bit of a longer view, the 11 types of jobs that are coming up right now are expected to grow really fast over the next decade. So looking into the future, they're expected to grow. And this is according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So we compared their list of fast-growing jobs to the flexible jobs that we see really regularly on FlexJobs to find the fastest growing flexible jobs to consider. So you can see there are a lot of opportunities there in the future. Interestingly, very many of them are in healthcare, in medical fields, and technical fields and things like that. So just some ideas to get you understanding what the market is going to be looking like over the coming years. But let's also discuss what the market actually looks like right now, because that is really important. So these top 20 fields are the most common career fields for flexible jobs, and that's all types of flexibility. This list is based on FlexJobs job posting data, and right now these fields have the most open positions. We look at this list really regularly throughout the year, and these fields tend to hold the top spots over time. So it's not something that changes quite a lot. These really tend to, over the years, hold those top positions. So as I said, our goal is to get you thinking about your possibilities when you see a list like this, what you might be able to do or what you're already doing that is a really good career field for flexible jobs. And hopefully that gets you thinking about those possibilities. This is a really fun list. These are some of the top companies for flexible jobs. And this is for 2 years of job posting data. And I like to show this really to just give you a sense of the huge amount of variety that is involved with companies hiring for flexible jobs. I think sometimes we have preconceived notions about which types of companies offer flexible work. And a list like this really shows you that there are a huge number of different types of companies from different fields and industries related to flexible jobs. You can find a lot of other companies that support flexible work options by going to the jobs and companies section of FlexJobs, and you'll see that right at the top of any FlexJobs page, of the blog, or if you go to our guide to the best companies with flexible jobs, you can find a lot more information on those 50,000 companies that we have researched. So I think this is just a good overview of the types of companies that you might find offering flexible jobs, and just to show you where the possibilities lie, which ultimately is sort of all over the place. There are so many different kinds. I also wanted to talk about scams in this job market because these are, it's an unfortunate piece of the flexible job market. There are quite a lot of scams, especially in the work from home job market in particular. If you're looking for a remote job, that's really where we see a lot of these. Scammers know that people want or need to work from home. It's a thing that a lot of people talk about. There are many surveys that show this. So their idea is to list fake job openings to try and lure people in. And that's to give up your personal information or access to credit cards or bank accounts or things like that. It's also estimated that there are about 60 to 70 scam remote jobs for every one legitimate remote job. So it's really important to know how to spot these scams and keep yourself safe. And as you can see, this is a list of some of the most common remote scams out there. So you may have heard of some of these or even seen some of these. And on the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to spot these types of scams. So here are some of the most common warning signs of job scams. Each of these, I want to make sure you know, is not necessarily a guarantee that what you found is a scam. So let's say you found a job listing where there's no company name. Does not 100% mean that that job listing is fake, but each warning sign should make you pause and do more research before you continue. That's really the main thing with these warning signs is be on the lookout for them and do more research when you find them before you get too far into the process. One that I wanted to call out in particular are the copycat companies. So these are when the web addresses do not match. So this happens where a scam will take the likeness of a really well-known company, their logo, their web design, even the names of people who work at that company, and they will create a fake website that is designed to mimic the real website and try to lure people in that way. This has happened with GE, CNBC, Google, a number of really well-known companies. So the way that you can tell that it's a fake site versus a real site is that the web address doesn't match. So when you're on a scam site, the web address is different than what it should be if you were on the real site. So these are just examples of this small difference that you might see. There's gecareers.com and then there's ge.com/careers. Two very similar websites, but that would take you to completely different places. These are just ones that I made up so that you could see sort of what the differences might be. But it's really important to notice those sorts of things. And I'll show you how you can kind of double check that on the next slide. So the first thing you can do are these really simple ways to figure out if you have found a scam job or a company. You, for any job or company that you're kind of questioning, you could open up a new browser and then search for that company's name or the job title and the word scam. And that's going to show you anything that comes up through news reports, review sites, Better Business Bureau information, even FBI warnings, FTC warnings. There's all sorts of different things you might find when you search for those words and the word scam that can tell you, yes, you're dealing with a scam, or no, you're not. The second method is if you find a well-known company and you think, you know, this doesn't seem quite right. There's a lot of typos on this site, but it says that it's this really well-known company. You can open up a new browser and then search for that company's name and the word careers to find their real careers page. And you can compare the URLs or the web addresses, or you can search for whatever fake job you may have found on their real page to see if it really is a job listed with that company. So these two searches take no time at all, just a couple minutes, and it will save you so much hassle. And one thing that I wanted to make really clear is that FlexJobs pre-screens every job and company on our site to weed out these types of scams. So if you're a FlexJobs member, you don't have to deal with that when you're on FlexJobs. That's one of the biggest benefits, I think, of using FlexJobs. So just to make that totally clear, this is not something you should have to worry about if you're a FlexJobs member. This is for when you're searching throughout the greater internet and you're on all sorts of other types of sites out there. Okay, so let's get into the bulk of today's presentation, which is building your job search roadmap for 2019. Hopefully this sets you up with a really good list of things to do and steps to follow so that when you execute your job search, whether it's right now or you've already even started, or you're gonna wait until 2019, you feel like you are ready to go and you have your roadmap right in front of you. So you just have to follow those steps. Okay, so these are the key stops on your roadmap. between now and January, hopefully, you're going to do several things. You are going to inventory your skills and start to build new ones. And I'm going to talk very specifically about which skills you should focus on. And don't worry, it's not a lot of homework to do over the holidays. These are pretty easy things that you can build very quickly that will make a good impact on your flexible job applications. And then you have to update your application materials. So this is one of those things where you're sitting around maybe by a fireplace with a mug of hot chocolate and you open up your laptop and start doing your resume. But this is a really important piece of this, is updating your resumes, cover letters, all of those sorts of things, LinkedIn profiles, and we're going to go over that. And then researching companies and jobs available. You want to know what you're getting yourself into, what the market looks like for the career fields that you are most interested in, and how to approach the job market based on the information that you're finding. And then, of course, start applying. So this really is just whenever you are ready to really get into the job search, you're going to start applying. So the first thing I thought it might be helpful to do is break down the potential skills that you'll need to land a flexible or remote job, and breaking them down into 3 different buckets. The first is skills you already have. So we're going to do a little bit of work here to show you what you might already have to offer a flexible or remote employer that you should be talking about in your application materials. You should be highlighting these things. The second is skills you can easily build. So these are those skills that I said over the next few weeks, you're going to want to do some homework and start building these skills. They're very simple, and you'll see what I mean. And then skills that might take more effort to build, things that it might be a good idea for you to pick up on, but that might take a little bit more effort, maybe taking some tutorials online or even taking a class. And this is ongoing work. This isn't necessarily something that you're going to have to cram into the next few weeks. But even if you get started, that's a really good thing to be able to talk to an employer about, is that you have started to build these types of skills. So let's talk about the first one. This first list is skills that you might already have. When we ask employers who post flexible and remote jobs what they are looking for outside of somebody's ability to do the actual job, these are the skills that they most often tell us they want. The first one, by a long shot, are digital communication skills. Being able to communicate really well, verbally and in writing, in a digital way. Because whether you have a flexible schedule, or you're working from home, or you're working part-time, you may be working at different times and in different locations than the rest of your team or your boss. So to be able to communicate is very important. You have to be able to communicate really well in those shifting environments where you're not always face-to-face working with people. The second, time management, task management, the ability to focus, really being your first line manager, telling yourself to stay on task, focus, and get your job done. Those are really important. Proactive questions, being able to speak up for yourself, not being afraid to ask questions, and also not being afraid just to talk about what you're working on, where you might be running into difficulty, or where you're excelling, what things you're doing really well, and sort of telling people your accomplishments. That's a really big part of being effective in a flexible team. Also having comfort with technology and basic troubleshooting skills. And you don't have to know anything too in depth. You just have to be comfortable troubleshooting different things. Like if your Wi-Fi goes out or you can't get some program on your computer to open, that's pretty important for you to do your job. Being able to do the basic stuff to figure out what might be going on is really important. This one is more of a broad concept, having a growth mindset. This really has to do with embracing change, embracing learning new things, being a consistent or a constant learner. And if you can show that you are a person who has this skill, that's a really big deal. So especially in flexible environments, things are changing rapidly. They're trying new processes. They're bringing on new applications and software and just testing out how different things work. So if you can show you're open to that type of environment, that's a really key skill to have. And then being familiar with digital communication tools, which brings me to the next slide. These are the skills that you can easily build. So in the next few weeks, this is your simple homework, is to go out and look at some of these programs that you don't already know and become familiar with them. As you look at this list, if you are familiar with any of these programs, they should be listed on your resume, in your LinkedIn profile. You want to make sure that employers know you're familiar with them, because flexible employers most often use these types of tools when they're communicating with their teams. And so if you know them, have them on your applications materials. And then if you don't know them yet, it's time to go out and learn about them. The good news is that most of these have easy free or trial versions. So you can, at least for free, be able to learn these skills and become familiar with these tools. And then you can add them to your resume because you will be familiar with them. So that's your easy homework. And then the skills that you can build with some effort. This is the area that might take a little bit more time, that you might have to devote some resources to. You might have to pay for a course. But there are a lot of ways to learn these things for free as well. So these are some skills of the future, things that employers are more often talking about now and looking for as we look for those future types of jobs or jobs that are going to have high growth. So cloud and distributed computing, statistical analysis and data mining, data and visual presentation and design thinking, and user interface design. Now, for some of you, you might already be familiar with some of these things and you're going, oh, okay, I know that, or I can learn that pretty easily. I have a general idea of what that is. For others, you may be looking at this list and thinking, I have no idea what those things mean. This is your chance to Google them and get at least basically familiar. And then think about the types of career fields that you're interested in, the types of jobs that are your target jobs, and whether these things might come in handy. So your first step would be to just do a quick Google search for each of these, learn what they are in a basic sense, and see whether they match with any of the types of jobs that you're going for. If they do, then you might want to learn a little bit more. YouTube is a great place to even just get started learning about these things, having people explain to you the fundamental or basic concepts of each of them. But if you wanted to get more in-depth, there are lots of free online learning options and also pay for online learning options. So there's edX, Coursera, and Open Culture for free courses. There are other ones out there as well. So if you find another one, that's great. And then there is General Assembly, LinkedIn Learning, lynda.com, and Skillshare for some pay learning. And of course, there are other ones as well. If you're a FlexJobs member, we have discounts for each of those paid learning sites. So that's something to take advantage of too through your FlexJobs membership. So these are just some things to be thinking about, to be basically familiar with, and to understand how they might impact your career choices and the jobs that you are applying for. Okay, so one thing I wanted to talk about is if you have previous experience. So now we've moved on to step 2 of our roadmap, which is updating your application materials. So the first thing you want to know is if you have any previous remote or flexible work experience. Those could be full-time or part-time experiences. So you've either worked remotely or had a flexible schedule all of the time, or maybe just some of the time. They could be formal or casual experiences, and they could be paid or volunteer experiences. All of these different types of experience could count. And this should say worked remotely or flexibly. For remote in particular, I like to point this next line out because people don't often think of it this way, but this can be really helpful in your applications. Have you ever worked with people from other locations than where you were actually based? In different office buildings or across time zones? If so, you have worked in a distributed fashion, which is very similar to a remote environment. You are working not physically with other people. So that experience can count as well. The reason I like to ask about this is because employers tend to value previous experience when you've worked flexibly or remotely. So if you have previous experience in any capacity, like this full-time, part-time, formal or casual, paid or volunteer, it's important to call that out on your resumes. So a lot of times I get asked, well, does my experience really count? So let's talk about how you can actually figure that out. You should ask yourself when you're thinking about any previous flexible or remote experience you might have and whether or not it really counts as something that you could say is experience. Ask yourself, would I be comfortable talking about my remote experience in a job interview? Or can I talk about how I was productive and effective during my remote or flexible experience? If you can talk about it comfortably and say, yes, I was able to work from home on occasion. Here's how I kept myself focused. I had a dedicated home office. Or yes, I was able to flex my hours a little bit. Here's how I stayed in communication with my coworkers. Or yes, I worked on a team across multiple time zones, and here's how I managed to do that really effectively. If you can talk about that in a job interview, then yes, it counts. That is your simple answer. You want to focus on how you were productive and effective in doing that work, and move on from there. So that hopefully helps you decide whether or not any potential previous experience you have really does count. All right, so let's talk about resumes for flexible jobs. If you think you do have previous flexible or remote experience, you want to add those keywords to the position. You can do that in the job title or in the location. And there's a few other places to add it as well. So we're going to talk about those. And then if you don't really have any flexible experience that you could speak about, that's okay. We've got another way to get around that. You want to really show your flexible work skills and tout that technology know-how. So those digital communication tools, your ease with technology, that you're learning new programs on a regular basis, all of those sorts of things are really good to highlight on your applications. So here are some different examples. If you attended our remote work resume webinar a couple weeks ago, you probably recognize some of these. We have, these are the lines on your resume in your work experience section where you list your job title, the company's name, your dates of employment, and the location. So if you were a remote worker or a freelancer, or you had flexible hours or flexible scheduling, those can all be highlighted here. So that's where you could potentially do that. This is most common when you worked in more of a formalized flexibility situation. So you were a remote worker on a regular basis, or you had a flexible schedule on a regular basis, something that was a little bit more set in stone. I'll show you a couple different ways to do this if it wasn't that type of position, if it was more of a casual arrangement. On the next slide. So for these resume summaries, these are a couple different examples of how you can put this on your resume in more casual ways. So your summary and your key skills or key abilities, this is a section that should be at the top of your resume. It really helps employers to get a sense of what you bring to the table quickly. It's a good overall snapshot of your absolute best accomplishments, experiences, and skills. So here on the top one, you have this line right in that summary paragraph that says experience working remotely with a dedicated home office. Perfect. Does not have to be any more complicated than that. You don't have to say how many years if you don't want to, if it was kind of a casual thing. But the fact that you have experience and a dedicated home office, that goes a long way for an employer. You also could call out your skills here. So communication skills, interpersonal skills, problem solving. You know, if you have the really excellent focus and self-management skills, or the ability to communicate really well in writing and verbally, any of those skills that we talked about on the previous screen, you know, continuous learning, a growth mindset, those could all be called out here. You also want to make sure you leave space for your specific skills that will enable you to actually do the job that you're applying for. So this person also has sales and fundraising, event planning, project organizing. Those were more central to what she was applying for. And then the proven customer service leader, you can see they've got their skills in that first line, team effectiveness and productivity through communication. So that's a good call out to communication skills and being able to be productive. And then in the bullet area, they have 6 years of experience working remotely and in flexible office environments. So this is somebody who really does feel like they could talk about an ongoing pattern of flexible work, of remote work to an employer during a job interview. So it's another good way to put it out there. I would also recommend, if you haven't watched, or if you didn't attend or haven't watched our Remote Resumes webinar, it's a great one to go back and watch. And you can find that on the FlexJobs blog in our webinars section. It goes through a lot more examples of this and a lot more detail into the specifics of resumes, which we don't have the time to cover here just yet. Okay, so here are just some of the key tips when it comes to applying. And I have another one to add to this as well. So the first thing is to edit your resume for every job. You really only have to focus on the summary and the key skills section when you're editing your resume. You do not have to rewrite the whole document. You don't have to edit every section. Those top 2 sections should be edited for each job, and you should really be speaking to the exact qualifications and skills that you have that make you the best candidate for that job. The second thing you want to do is match the employer's wording. So do they say remote when they're talking about their remote jobs, or do they say telecommuting? Whichever they say, your resume should say. So that's really important, is to match their wording. Also, when it comes to whatever skills and experience they are listing, match their wording. So if they say customer service experience and you have client service experience on your resume, you want to make sure that you match those up so that if they're saying customer, you're saying customer. And then keep your formatting simple. So a lot of times we see these really highly formatted resumes and they look beautiful, of course. However, they have to be able to be read by applicant tracking systems and on mobile devices. And a really heavily formatted resume does not always do well in those two environments. So keeping your formatting simple is absolutely fine. You don't have to go totally crazy. I would keep it simple in terms of your font choice, how many, bolded areas and italicized areas you're using and things like that. And just keep it sort of simple and classic. PDF files are ideal for submitting your resumes because that ensures that your formatting stays formatted for the person who's reading it. They can actually see what you've done with your formatting instead of getting it all jumbled if they don't have Word, or they don't have the right version of Word, or they don't have Google Docs, or whatever it might be. So those are just some of the key tips there. The other tip I would recommend is take all of these tips and all of the changes that you might make to your resume and do the same to your LinkedIn profiles, and also talk about those skills and key qualifications that you have in your cover letter. So if you have a certain number of years experience working remotely and they look for people with remote experience, that's something you definitely want to say in your cover letter. Things like that. You really want to make those main accomplishments stand out. Okay, so the last stop in your job search roadmap may be FlexJobs. I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about how to apply for flexible and remote jobs on FlexJobs. And this is also good if you're not a FlexJobs member, you can still use FlexJobs for a lot of really good research. So you can do some research on FlexJobs. You'll find all of the job listings and a brief description of each, a brief summary of the hours and the flexibility and things like that. So it's a really good place to do research, even if you are not necessarily a FlexJobs member. And hopefully this is some good in-depth information for our members who want to pinpoint jobs a little bit more easily or better on FlexJobs. These are some of our key tips. So whether you're a member of FlexJobs or not, you will be able to search our full job listings and see all of the results that match your search parameters. There are two really easy ways to search. The first is if you're opening up any page on FlexJobs, you will see this at the top navigation bar, this search jobs area. And that, when you go to use that, and I'm just gonna see if I can highlight this, there we go. When you use that, when you start typing, it's gonna open up this larger search box down here. And you can fill in the keywords and then your city or your state or your zip code. And I think it's important when even if you're looking for remote jobs, to put in a location. Sometimes we feel like we could skip that because we want to work remotely, but actually about 95% of remote jobs out there have some location requirement. So it's important to put in your location to make sure that you match those requirements. And then you can also refine your, excuse me, I'm just trying to get this one screen to go away here. Sorry, it looks like we might be stuck. There we go. So then you can refine your search results. When you get to the search results page, you will see this area here, keyword search help. And if you click that little spot, that will bring up all sorts of different ways to refine your keyword search using plus signs, pipes, dashes, quotes, stars, all sorts of different things you can use there. And then you can also refine your results by the job type, the schedule, the job category, the remote work level, the accolades that the company has won, the career level, the title, the company, and the travel required. So lots of different ways you can refine it. I would recommend choosing only the things that are most important to you. So not using every single section to refine this, but refining it, if remote work is the most important, use your remote work level to refine that. If, not traveling at all is really important, you might want to focus there. But not doing necessarily every single one because you may rule yourself out of some jobs that you actually would really like. Okay, so there are a couple different things to note here. When you get your flexible job search results, you can refine your search. That's on the right sidebar, as I've been talking about. The remote work level is something that I wanted to call out in particular because you can choose how much you want to work remotely. And I think for a lot of people on here, you probably want to work remotely 100% of the time. So this is how you would select those jobs that only are hiring for people to work remotely 100% of the time. So that's the section you can use that to do. Ah, yes. Sometimes I forget about the animation that I have fun putting in when I'm putting in the presentation. Okay, so whether you're a FlexJobs member or not, as I was saying before, we also offer some free resources on finding and landing flexible and remote jobs. So you should definitely use the site to your advantage, members and non-members alike. The FlexJobs blog is great. It's got 5,000 articles on landing flexible and remote work. And then the one of those articles that we put out every year is the 100 top companies for remote jobs. That next list comes out in January. In mid-January, we'll be putting that out once again. And you can find it at that web address, flexjobs.com/blog/top100remote. That's a great way to pinpoint companies who really heavily use remote work. And then we also have the FlexJobs guide to the best companies for flexible jobs. And this is where we've sort of ranked those 50,000 companies. We'll show you the top 100 companies in a number of different career fields, the top 100 companies for different states. And you can also search by name to find any of those 50,000 companies and see whether they have offered flexible jobs in the past and what they are and all sorts of good stuff. So those are just some of the main parts of the site that I wanted to call out. Okay, so perfect. We've come to the end of the actual presentation and we have about 20 minutes left for questions, which I'm very excited about. So as you're thinking of your questions, you can put those into your question and answer section on your Zoom control panel. So be sure to look out for that. I know we have some questions coming in already, but if you have questions, please feel free to enter them there. Some action steps for you as you are thinking of your questions. The first thing I want you to do is think about your possibilities. What are your target jobs or career fields? Do you want to stay in the same career or change careers? You know, really starting to think about what your ideal situation would be, and then also what pretty good situations would be. If you couldn't find your ideal, what would those backup plans be? And then decide on a focus and research it. So the thing is, whenever I talk to somebody, especially in career coaching sessions, who's really not sure what they want to do, usually they have some ideas, but they haven't done enough in-depth research to figure out which of those ideas they should pursue. So I highly recommend doing some research, trying to learn from other people about what different career fields are like, or what working for a particular company is like, and research those things so that you have a good sense of it. I think the fear of the unknown is usually what holds people back, but it's so easy to do this type of research and learn about something so that you can erase that fear and move on to the next step, which would be pinpointing your best skills and which you need to build. So figuring out what skills you already have that set you up really nicely for flexible and remote work, and then which ones you might want to spend some time over the next few weeks or even longer building. Then you have to update your application materials, resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn profiles, anywhere that you are active professionally. You should try to get those things to match up pretty well so that an employer who finds you online is going to find a consistent story about you and who you are and what you have to offer as a professional. And then you have to search for open jobs. So on FlexJobs members, you will see the full descriptions of jobs, the company names, and the contact information, and the best ways to apply. If you're not a member of FlexJobs, you'll still see every listing, but you'll only see basic details. So there won't be a company name, there won't be the full description, but there will be a short description, but it at least gives you a sense of the types of jobs that are out there and what you might find. So that's the key distinction there. And wherever you're searching, be sure to stay with the scams that we talked about, those different warning signs. Keep those in mind so that as you're searching, you can keep yourself safe. Okay, so it is time for the question and answer portion of our presentation. And it looks like we went from about 20 questions to about 54 questions in that last 3-minute span. So you guys have got some good questions. So let's dive into those. Excuse me. Now I'm just reading into these. Yes, I am older and have left my previous employment. However, I do not consider myself retired. Any suggestions for overcoming age discrimination? Yes, I have a couple of suggestions, and I will say that my suggestions really come from one of our partners, Mark Miller at Career Pivot. If you don't know Mark and you are in this bucket of people who are older workers who are not yet retiring, Mark Miller is a great resource. This is his focus. And essentially what he says is age discrimination is really mindset discrimination. So when an employer or a hiring manager potentially discriminates based on age, what they're really worried about or trying to guard against is they don't want to hire somebody who they assume, unfortunately, or who they think will be resistant to change, resistant to technology, resistant to having someone else tell them how to do things, especially if that someone else is younger. It's this idea that you wouldn't be adaptable in their environment because you have so much experience and so much knowledge and know-how that you might have a certain way you want to do things, or that you might not be up to the task of learning new technology or software programs and things like that. So what you really have to do is focus on what they're really worried about. And it's not that those are worries that are legitimate, it's just that that is what they worry about. So let's focus on what we can fix, which is making sure that on your resume and your LinkedIn profiles, and when you're talking to people, that you are up to learning those new technology, communication tools and things like that, making sure that whatever you do know in that way is listed on your resume, talking about how you are a continuous learner, always being open to learning new things, really focusing on the fact that you are a flexible, adaptable employee and you are excited to work with other people, and all of that sort of stuff can really help as far as age discrimination and ageism go. But like I said, Mark Miller at Career Pivot is a really good resource for that sort of thing. Okay, so I find it difficult to define my actual accomplishments when it comes to some of my recent jobs, when it comes to distinguishing these from my actual job duties. This is really common. When you're writing your resume, it can be really hard for you to figure out how to say what you accomplished versus what you did. So what you did is a list of tasks. You updated software programs, you worked with clients who had problems in X, Y, and Z, whatever those tasks were that you did on a regular basis. Your accomplishments are the results of your actions. So a way that you could think about this is the SAR method. It is SAR. The S stands for the situation or the task. That's another good way to look at it. The situation at hand, what was happening, what were you doing? The action that you took, which is your actual task, the thing that you did, and then what was the result? I think that's the piece that people forget to add, is what was the result of the task that you did? So your daily work on whatever task might be, what was the result of all of that work, either for that one task or a year's worth of doing that task? What happened as a result of your hard work? If you can quantify that result, that's even better. But if you can't, that's fine. If it was just that you turned around angry customers, you instituted a new database, or you helped other people in your office learn something so that everybody was more productive, try to add in results whenever you can. And that's the difference between just a task and an accomplishment, is adding in what the result actually was. So what I like to recommend is when you're writing your task, you should say, and so after your task. So, let's say it was updated software programs in the office. And so that resulted in X, Y, and Z. So you want to force yourself to finish that thought in terms of a result. So you'd say, and so, and then add in your result there. So hopefully that helps you kind of jump from your tasks to what you actually accomplished. Okay, so let's see. How does the interview and hiring process work for a remote position? Great question. It is very similar to a traditional type of job. So you will have at least, a phone interview to start with. It could be a screening interview where you talk to, an HR rep who's just kind of getting a feel for who you are and what you have to offer before they pass you to the hiring manager. But typically there's that phone screening interview, and then you will have multiple interviews after that, depending on the role that you're going for and the responsibility and all of that. But they're typically done over phone. Most remote positions are phone interviews. There are some video interviews though. And you have to prepare for those in different ways. So I would always recommend asking your interviewer, the person that you're emailing with, whoever you're scheduling with, what's the format of this interview? Will it be a phone interview? Will it be a video interview? And that way you give yourself a chance to prepare for it. Phone calls and Skype, just as this person asked, those are typically the things that are used. It might be not Skype, it might be Google Hangouts, it might be different software programs, but that is, that's how that works usually. Very rarely a remote position will have you do an in-person interview. Most of the time they will be these phone or video interviews. And we have a lot of good articles on the FlexJobs blog for how to prepare for both of those types of interviews. So hopefully that helps. Okay, so another question is, are certificates of completion worth adding to the education section of your resume? Yes, if they are related to the type of job you're going after, absolutely. Add any certificates, anything that you've learned, even if you've taken courses that didn't even result in a certificate, but you learned something from that and you could talk about that course and it's related to the type of job that you want, I would say put those in your education section. If it is highly applicable to the job, like let's say that they want you to be a certified Scrum Master and you are a certified Scrum Master, that should be one of the bullets or the sentences in your summary at the top of your resume. So if it is highly, highly applicable, you want to put it not only in your education section, but also at the very top of your resume. So it's one of the first things that the employer sees. Okay. This question is about the webinar. Will the webinar recording link include your slides as well as the audio? It doesn't include the slides, but it does include the video portion. So yes, you will see the slides on the screen just like you see them now, as well as the audio. As far as like a copy of the PowerPoint slides that you could download, we don't have that ability. But it will be including the video and the audio. Thank you for the kudos on a terrific presentation. I always like to see that. Thank you very much. Let's see. Do you have any advice for an expat needing to work 90 to 95% from overseas? Yes, for anybody who's outside of the US or even in the US, but looking to work abroad or looking to not have location restrictions on your remote job, there is a way you can search on FlexJobs. It's called Work From Anywhere. So if you're on the advanced search page, you can search under international and then Work From Anywhere. And that will open you up to the jobs on our site that literally will let you work from anywhere. So if you're going to be moving around a lot, or you are going to know that you're living in another country and you just want to make sure that the remote job you get is allowed, allows you to work in that country, that's a good search to do. You could also, if you know the specific country that you are going to be living in and you're not going to be jumping around all over the place, you could put that country in. Or you could search, there's also a nationwide search if you're in the US and you just want the ability to live anywhere in the US and do this job. There is a nationwide search that you can do for United States as well. So a lot of companies, if you're in the US, will try to have you live in a certain state or region of the country. But if you do that nationwide search by United States, you will be able to find jobs that allow you to live anywhere in the United States. All right, so let's see, we've got about 10 minutes left. Good, let's keep going. I am a voiceover talent recording from my home studio, and I'm wondering if FlexJobs lists creative job opportunities. Yes, I do believe we have some voiceover jobs and other creative types of jobs. So that is, I believe, a yes. And you can search for those too, even if you're not a FlexJobs member. You could do some searching and see if they're exactly the type of job that you're interested in. All right, let's see. Oh, what about overqualified individuals? When are you simply looking to start over, or when you're simply looking to start over, what are your recommendations to still be noticed? A couple different things you could do. First, you really want to focus your resume on not just what you've done, but what you want to do. So this is a really good idea to research people on LinkedIn who do what you want to do and see how they talk about their experience, the types of skills that are important to that job. You can look at people's LinkedIn profiles and get a lot of really good information in terms of what you need to have in your LinkedIn profile or your resume. So the skills that they talk about, the type of work that they really highlight, that's important, is to transition what you've done into what you want to do through those different types of skills that you may have that could transfer from one job to another. The other thing is to not go too far into your work history. And this also might have to do with somebody who is a little bit worried about ageism as well. To go back maybe 10 or 15 years in your work history and then leave it at that. You don't have to list your entire history, especially if you have a long work history. Even if the things that you did 20 or 30 years ago are pretty highly applicable to what you want to do today, unless there's nothing in between those older experiences and the present day that you could talk about that's also applicable, I would leave the older stuff off. That's a pretty simple way to do it. And really focus. One of the things you can do is not just list your job title for each of your jobs on your resume, but list a comparable explanation of that job title that maybe is more in line with the level of career that you're going for. So if you were a director level for a content team, let's say, I used to do this, so that's what came to mind. If you're a director of content, you could also write, content manager if you're looking to step down that way, or content writer, content creator, and give employers a couple different job titles that describe what you did and what you could do at a lower level, so that they understand you have that experience. I would also leave a line in your cover letter and be upfront about it. This is my last tip for this one, that actually says, after such and such number of years at this certain level, I am really looking forward to getting to this type of job for X, Y, and Z reasons. Maybe it's because you want to be more one-on-one with customers. You've missed that customer interaction. Or you want to focus more on really getting in there and being one of the worker bees who's working with the product or with the service on a regular basis versus managing other people doing it. So give an explanation, just a quick one-sentence explanation about why you're excited to be overqualified and to be looking for something at a lower level. I think that can really help. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. Do you have any advice on how not to be swallowed up by doubt when receiving rejection letters? Yes, this is a hard one. On the one hand, receiving a rejection letter can be nice because you know that where you stand with that job. And for so many jobs, when you apply, you won't hear anything. And then you'll really be wondering, what is going on? Did they ever even get my application? Why haven't I heard anything at all? So I would say, first, know, and this is hard to train your brain to understand this, but if it's possible, do so, that everybody receives a ton of rejection letters. It's part and parcel to job searching. It's part of the process of getting rejected over and over and over again. It's an unfortunate part of it, but everybody is going through it. It is not just you. I know sometimes it starts to feel like, am I the only person who is not getting a positive response? The second thing is to figure out what it might be that is not giving you the positive response. Are you updating your resume for each job so that it really matches the keywords in that job description? Are you going on LinkedIn and finding out if you know anybody who either works at that company or who knows someone who works at that company, and then working your connections that way to find a person who might be able to help submit your resume to the hiring manager. These steps can really help. You might be the most qualified person for that job, but unless you're making it super obvious to the employer, it can sometimes be hard to get a call for an interview. So updating your resume, trying to figure out who knows someone at that company, and then working through them so you actually have a human being handing in your application as well as applying online. Those are two of the biggest things. And I would also say keeping yourself busy learning new things can really help, because it gives you things to add to your resume. It helps you feel like you are accomplishing something. When in a job search for a long time, it can feel like you're not getting anywhere. So if you are taking a class or even just doing YouTube tutorials to help you learn new things, it can at least keep your spirits up. You know you're keeping yourself fresh, and you're constantly adding new things to your resume or to your applications that might make you qualified. So those are just a couple ideas there. All right, it looks like we probably have time for one or two more questions. One question, let's see. Is there a way to have two LinkedIn profiles? Short answer is no, I don't believe there is. I think you can only have one LinkedIn profile. I'm sure that you could, create a whole different email address and create a brand new profile, but I'm pretty sure LinkedIn is not set up to do that very well. And I want to say it's against their terms of use, but I'm not positive. But no, I don't know many people who have two LinkedIn profiles. if anybody does, feel free to chime in. Maybe we can give this person some additional advice. Someone wants to know if FlexJobs has a resume review service. So yes, in a way, we do offer career coaching. It is for an additional fee on top of your FlexJobs membership, but it's extremely discounted. So you'd get a 30-minute coaching session with one of our coaches. I'm one of those. And then we have Tony Frana, who's also excellent. And that can include a resume review and a bunch of other things that you would like to talk about during that 30 minutes. So yes, we do resume reviews through that service. And just in case anyone's interested, it is $45 for a 30-minute phone session with a career coach at FlexJobs. All right, let's see. Okay, this is a good question because common question with flexible and remote jobs in particular. Do many of the jobs on your site offer benefits? Yes, the way benefits work for flexible and remote jobs is very similar to how they work for more traditional in-office jobs. So it really has to do with if you're an employee or a freelancer. If you're a freelancer, you will be responsible for your own benefits, health insurance, 401k, all of that kind of stuff. That's on you. If it's an employee job, then it matters how many hours you're working, if you're part-time or you're full-time. Full-time jobs typically offer benefits, just like a traditional in-office full-time job would. A part-time job, if it's an employee job, may offer benefits, but it's a company by company decision. So not every company treats part-time employees as able to access benefits, but some of them do. So the short answer is if it's a full-time employee job that happens to be remote or have flexible hours, then yes, it most likely offers benefits. All right, and that brings us to the top of the hour and the end of my voice. It feels like I'm losing my voice, so I'm gonna end it here. I do want to thank everyone today for coming to this presentation, for asking such great questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to them. We actually have 118 questions right now, so for every question I answered, I think 3 more got added. But thank you all very much. And I wish you the best of luck in your search. Happy preparing for the rest of the year. And then good luck in 2019 as you search for flexible jobs. You can also view upcoming and past webinars on FlexJobs at flexjobs.com/blog, and then under FlexJobs resources, and then job search webinars and videos. We have a really nice library there of all of the types of webinars we've done in the past. And that remote resumes webinar is one of the first ones on top of that section. So you'll be able to find that really easily. Tomorrow, you will receive an email with the recording of this webinar. So I invite you to rewatch it as much as you would like, and then put these tips and tricks into action and get yourself a flexible or remote job. Thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of the day, and happy holidays and almost New Year. Bye-bye.